Welcome in, whiskey freaks, to the Blind Tasting Podcast Splash and Dash Edition. Today, I'm finally cracking open a bottle I got way back in 2024, and it's a particularly special bottle to me. Well, it was at the time, and it sure as hell is now, with it being the 250th anniversary of America. And this is technically what I call a Splash and Dash episode. And that's typically where I skip a lot of the history lesson and I get straight to tasting. But that's not going to exactly be the case today, because this is going to be a bit of an extended Splash and Dash edition, because I got a story and I've got history, and then I'm going to do the tasting. So back in 2024, the summer, we took a little family trip. It was a patriotic trip, if you will. We wanted to tour a lot of the founding fathers' locations in our country. So we toured James Madison's place. We toured Thomas Jefferson's place. And we toured other historic sites that pertain to the birth of our country. And one such site we visited was George Washington's Mount Vernon. And lo and behold, at Mount Vernon, in addition to the home and the grounds and the farmland and the beauty right there on the Potomac, they had, much to my wife's chagrin, and for those of you with infinity bottles, that means my wife was none too happy to see it, they have a distillery. In fact, it's George Washington's distillery. So I'm not going to bore you here with our trip entirely today, but I am going to bring you up to date on George Washington's distillery and how it came about and all that good stuff. And George Washington's birthday is right around the corner. It's going to be, I think it's on February 22nd. He was born all the way back in 1732. So I figured, hey, it's his birthday. It's the birthday of America this year. Let's go. Now, we all know about George Washington crossing the Delaware, at least we should, and him becoming our first president. And also he got his face on our money. And that's all cool and all that good stuff. But there's really much more to history than that. By 1799, George Washington was actually running one of the biggest whiskey distilleries in America. They were putting out nearly 11,000 gallons a year. Let that sink in just for a second, guys. That's not a hobby. That's a serious operation. Washington's whiskey recipe isn't a mystery either, and we know it because researchers dug up some of this information through his distillery ledgers that he kept from back in the day, the books that he kept back in the 1790s. And they determined that the mash bill is 60% rye, 35% corn, and 5% malted barley. And that's basically a very rye-forward American whiskey before anyone even called it that. Now, Washington didn't just wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm going to be a distiller. The actual push, it came from his Scottish farm manager, a dude by the name of James Anderson. And Anderson knew distilling, and he saw the grain crops that they had there at the farm, the water supply, they were right there on the Potomac, in addition to springs and other water sources. They had a grist mill that they used for grinding up their grain already for their process and for their farm. And this Anderson guy said, look, this is just money sitting here. So Washington actually listened to him. And by 1797, they were building a full-on stone distillery with 5 copper pot stills. And most distilleries at that time had 1, maybe 2 stills, and they ran for a month or so a year. Washington's ran all year long, 5 stills. And that alone made it massive, at least for that time period. Now, whiskey was everywhere back there, guys. People drank it socially, medicinally. They used it as a form of trade. We know that. It was much easier to keep and store whiskey than it was corn. And that was one of the reasons that whiskey took off. And Washington himself preferred Madeira and port. He liked rum punch. He liked porter and whiskey too. But one thing about Washington, he was big on moderation. Now, most of what came out of Mount Vernon was straight rye whiskey, usually double distilled and sold unaged. That's another thing that makes this time period different We didn't do the aging in the charred oak barrels until several decades later. Anyway, some batches got distilled more times and cost more. Some were filtered, some were flavored, and they even made brandy when fruit was around during the summertime. Now, this was kind of what you would call practical whiskey, not collector whiskey like we have today. And no, none of it was bottled, branded, or aged. Back then, whiskey went into uncharred barrels and it got hauled into Alexandria, Virginia, and it got sold fast. Back then, cash flow mattered more than all the mystique that we have today. And here's another part people don't always mention. It's a lot of history, guys. This is pretty important. He had 6 slaves, 6 slave men, actually, and they did much of the skilled distilling work there. And these weren't your typical field laborers, so to speak. These guys were trained distillers, and they ran his complex distilling operation for the most part. Just a little point that I wanted to mention there. It's very important. Now, one of the smartest things Washington did was he fed the leftover mash to his animals, his hogs specifically. He gave them the slop that was left over to fatten them up to the point where visitors wrote about the pigs so big they could barely walk. So nothing went to waste in his distilling operation. And I think that's for the greater part of that time period. People didn't waste things like we do now, right? Things weren't disposable. Things, you didn't go to the store and buy one. That's just the nature of this part of history. And fun fact, and this is something I want to mention later too, George Washington had his own grist mill to grind the grain. And they've actually recreated that grist mill. They've built it. There is a working, usable grist mill there on the distillery property. I have pictures of it. I have video of it. I'm going to post those on Facebook and Instagram when this episode drops. Now, financially, the distillery crushed it. In 1799 alone, it made George Washington about $7,500. And that's serious money for the time, guys. Converted to today's dollars, it would be almost 200 grand. He even paid, this is the part he even paid federal excise taxes on it. That's the same whiskey tax that later sparked the Whiskey Rebellion, which Washington personally shut down with troops. History's kind of funny like that, guys. Now, after Washington died in that same year of 1799, it's all very interesting. He got this operation up, he got it running, chugging along, making money, and then he went and died. And when he died, along with many things, the distillery faded away. And eventually it burned down, and it disappeared for nearly 200 years. Now today, like I mentioned, it's been reconstructed there at Mount Vernon, and they still make whiskey there using the old methods. And that brings me to today. Let's fast forward. They now use Washington's original recipe and traditional 18th century methods to produce Washington's rye whiskey. The staff there at Mount Vernon, they have a staff, actually, a distilling staff. They actually grind the grain in Washington's water-powered grist mill. They set the mash in 120-gallon wood fermentation vats, and they run wood-fired copper pot stills. I have pictures of these on social media. Wood-fired copper pot stills to produce rye whiskey, and they try to make it as close to the original recipe as possible by doing the old methods, just like I described. And that brings me to the whiskey I'll be cracking open today. I'm going to be drinking and tasting and giving my thoughts on the official state spirit of the Commonwealth of Virginia, George Washington's rye whiskey. And specifically, today, it'll be George Washington's 5-year premium rye whiskey. This whiskey is aged 5 years. And in this case, I talked to the master distiller when I was there. He told me it was actually aged 5 years and 7 months because there was actually some sort of a delay in bottling this batch. So it actually had to remain in the barrels a little bit longer than normal. So we get the benefit of a little extra aging time here. And like I mentioned already, the mash bill is 60 rye, 35 corn, and 5% malted barley. Now the price. This bad boy is a little 375 milliliter bottle. It's the only size they sell there at Mount Vernon at the distillery. And it set me back a good bit. I never pay this much. And if you extrapolate this out, you'll understand what I mean. And I say never, but I mean almost never. There are things I do pick up. But I couldn't pass this one up on a family trip, touring the Founding Fathers, and there at George Washington's distillery. This 375 set me back $225.
Woo, doggy!
I've got a pic of the bottle on socials as well. So again, take a look. It's very stately. It's really presidential looking to me. Very well done. Very classy looking bottle. And before I go any further, I want to make something abundantly clear. Something you can always count on here at the Blind Tasting Podcast. I buy my own whiskey, much to the chagrin of my wife, because if the distillery sent it to me for free, wouldn't I give them a good or at least a decent review, right? Why would a guy bite the hand that's feeding them? Yeah, so that's those other guys. That's not me. And I love how they put the disclaimer in there. Some of them don't even put a disclaimer. They say, this sample was provided to us absolutely no cost, but we're going to be totally honest. Sure, guys. Anyway, so the proof on this rye whiskey, this is the premium rye whiskey, comes in at 93 proof. I think they have two other versions. I think they have an unaged at like 80 proof or something, and then they've got another rye at 86 proof. I upped, I think I could have bought that for like 100 or 125. Anyway, I opted for the most expensive bottle, the premium, right? The 93 proofer, it's 46.5% alcohol by volume. It was hand bottled right there in Virginia at the distillery. Everything takes place right there. Okay, guys, so why am I doing this? Well, I talked about our country. I talked about George Washington. I talked about hello, I love whiskey. But I want to learn a couple things specifically. And I want to figure out, what am I actually tasting here? Is it going to be history today, or is it going to be flavor? Like, am I judging this like a modern rye, or am I tasting it as an 18th century recreation? Because those are really two very different scorecards, right? And this would be my first go at this kind of thing. This is a antique or heirloom recipe, right? And the other thing I want to learn, how much of this $225 is the whiskey talking, and how much is the experience? I mean, we toured the distillery, I talked to the master distiller, we talked to the folks that run it. Maybe I've got some bias here, right? And I'm on a family trip. So anyway, I want to learn how much of that 225 is the experience, and how much is it the quality of the whiskey. Oh, and real quick, this bottle was actually, looking at the bottle right here now in my hands, this bottle was actually aged 5 years and 8 months, not 5 years and 7 like I told you. So it says so right here in my hand. This is bottle number 636 from the 2024 season. Oh, and I also forgot to mention it was aged in charred American oak barrels for those 5 years and 8 months. All right, let's open this baby up. There's a nice little pop. I am tasting today with my favorite St. Louis Bourbon Society Glencairn. All right. Okay, I'm moving it around in the Glencairn, just checking out the legs, looking at the viscosity here. And it's got actually moderate legs, guys. They're not amazing, but there is some liquid still standing on the edges of the inside of the glass as I move it back and forth. Yeah, it's got, I would say, medium legs. There's some viscosity here. And the color. You know how I feel about the color, at least what I say about the color of whiskey. I say to never judge the color by looking at it inside the bottle alone. This bottle here specifically, the label wraps entirely around this little 375. It's almost impossible to tell what the hell's in the bottle. Don't judge it that way anyway. You got to put it in your Glencairn or your glass to evaluate it. And like I always say, the color, I'm just trying to get a sniff of it. Yeah, the color will sometimes give you an idea of what I call the breadth of flavors you're about to receive in your mouth. So that's just my opinion, that the darker the hue of the whiskey, the deeper the flavors are going to be. It's not always the case, but it is sometimes. I'm going to say it every time. And this one, the color, well, quite frankly, I'd call it like straw yellow. Sadly, it does not have a deep hue or enticing look to it. To me, not too impressed at this point. Not too impressed at all. But we know it's over 5 years old, almost 6 years old actually. It is what it is. The color, not impressing me at this point. Let me give it a nose. It's fresh. Right off the bat, I'm getting a pop of a real nice sweetness. A lot more sweetness. And this is a rye. I mean, this is 60% rye, but I'm getting a lot of sweetness on the nose right here. And okay, along with that sweetness, I am getting this sweet grassy note. Excuse me. Not like a wet grass, more like a dry grass. Yeah, not like you just mowed the grass, but like it's been out there dried for a long time. It's pleasant. It's nice. And the more I nose it, the more I'm getting this cereal type of note too. Grainy, like cereal, grainy, like super sugar crisp. Remember those back in the days? I think they call it, what do they call it now? I don't know what they call it now, but it's got the bear on the box of cereal. Super sugar crisp. It's delicious. Just a little tinge of caramel here too on the nose. And it's kind of interesting. I'm trying so hard, but I'm not getting any oak. I mean, like none. And for something almost 6 years old, 6 years in the barrel here, I think that's very interesting. I don't know. I think the sweetness is really the most prominent note here, and more than anything, I would call the tasting notes here muted. There's not a ton going on here. It's not turning me away, but it's also not really drawing me in either. No, there really isn't much to say at this point. So, oh yeah, and I'm getting 0 alcohol on the nose, or ethanol, right? Whatever, guys. I think that's cool. It's 93 proof, so it's not really, I mean, I didn't expect it to pack a wallop of ethanol or alcohol on the nose. No, so it's not really unexpected, but that's a good sign, right? Yeah, no alcohol on the nose. Let me get an initial sip here, guys. I'm gonna do a little Kentucky Chew. Wow, it's very peppery right off the bat. Makes sense. It's a rye whiskey. I get that. 60% rye. That pepper makes a lot of sense. And as I work it around in my mouth, now I'm actually getting some oakiness. Now, that was not present on the nose. Like I'm telling you, not one lick of oak on the nose. I'm getting that oakiness here in my mouth. And the longer it sits in here, the more fruitiness I'm getting here, like a light green apple maybe. And there's like, let me get another sip real quick. I almost think it's like a port wine flavor in here too, but it's not terrible. It's not terrible. If you've ever enjoyed any Angel's Envy, I believe that's finished in port. It's terrific. This is, I wouldn't call it as terrific. Kind of undecided at this point. Let me get another sip. Okay. So I'm trying to be real cool here, guys. That does have a below average mouthfeel, but there is some mouthfeel. And what does linger, it's just that strong kind of wine note in here, and it's super, super sweet. So if you don't like a sweet whiskey, this definitely isn't for you. Absolutely. I'm just going to tell you right now, there's going to be no verdict on that. If you don't like sweet, you're not going to like this. And I think the sweetness may be its redeeming quality. All right, let me get one last sip here before we go any further. Okay, there it is. It's okay. I was wondering before I said anything. It's got this cranberry note on the finish, and it just hangs out there. I didn't want to say what I thought it was. I knew it was this kind of a sourish note, but yes, it is definitely cranberry, not port wine. I think those are very similar, but anyway, I guess I'm only mostly a dumbass. All right, guys, I think I'm going to get one more sip. I'm trying to be fair. I'm trying to give this every opportunity here. Yeah, this is George Washington's recipe, the founding father of our country. So I'm trying, I guess I'm trying to tip the scale here, but y'all probably want to know for real, what's the verdict? What do I think about George Washington's premium rye whiskey? Well, we'll find out right after the money spot. Hey, whiskey freaks. Quick announcement here. I wrote a book. Yeah, me, a real book with real stories. It's called Whiskey Wisdom and Bourbon BS. Barrel strength legends, lies, and untold tales. And it's packed with dozens of wild, weird whiskey tales from the strangest corners of bourbon history. And every chapter ends with one question. Was it whiskey wisdom or was it BS? You want to learn about whiskey history and have fun while you're doing it? Well, then you need to grab this book. It's just $10 on Amazon Kindle. It's cheap, it's fun, and all the cool kids are doing it. So don't be left out because you want to be cool too, right? Did I mention it's just $10? Yeah, and you can read it on any device with the free Amazon Kindle app. Just hit the link in the show notes, grab a pour, grab the book, and enjoy the whiskey history. That's Whiskey Wisdom and Bourbon BS. Barrel strength legends, lies, and untold tales. So, on the Blind Tasting Podcast, you guys know there are 3 verdict options. Are we going to keep it? Are we going to collect it? Or are we going to cull it? Well, to keep it means to proudly display it in your liquor cabinet or your bar. The stuff's good for a pour anytime, but really no need to rush out there and stock up on it because it's always available. Collect it. You're going to want to grab a bottle or 2 or maybe 3 since you find it so damn delicious, or it just may not be easy to get your hands on. And last one is cull it. Use it to loosen rusty bolts or sanitize a dirty toilet. In the case of George Washington's premium rye whiskey, coming in at 93 proof and aged for 5 years and 8 months, using his old school 1700s recipe, I say keep it. But I only say keep it because it's historically significant. And damn it, I paid a shit ton for this little $3.75. Now, that being said, I had great family memories. We had a good time, beautiful trip, learned about the country, all those great things. Now, remember my questions for myself. Yeah, I'm asking myself questions. That's the kind of guy I am. What am I actually tasting here? I wanted to know, am I tasting history or am I tasting flavor? Kind of a crazy question, right? Well, I think based on the historical significance here, I'm going to give it that keep it pretty much for that alone. It's a lot different than what you would call a modern rye. This is not anything like Still Austin or Green River or any of that. And I know the mash bills are different. I get all that. We don't have to hash that all out today. I can't think of anything really to compare it against as far as a modern day rye goes. And my other question for myself was, how much of this $225 little $3.75 is the whiskey talking, and how much is it the experience that I had with my family? Guys, I'm not going to lie. It's the experience, like almost 100% the experience. If you paid more than $40 or $50 for this, you'd be crazy. And so on one hand, I'm kind of kicking my ass for doing it, but when are you ever going to get the chance to taste George Washington's rye whiskey? And the answer is almost probably never, right? So would I do it again? No. But I think we got to keep in mind, whiskey back in George's time would have been used for a number of things. I mentioned that early, right? Other than drinking. They used it for antiseptic. They used it as a cleaner. You name it, guys. They used it for all kinds of things. And you'd think this modern day version that's been recreated here and aged would be leaps and bounds above anything you'd have found back then. That's what you'd think. Okay, let me get another sip just for fun. I'm trying my best here, guys. Okay, yeah. This just isn't layered like a modern finished whiskey. It's pretty straightforward. It's grain, it's spice, a little bit of oak in there. Simplicity, I guess, is what I would say. It's historically accurate. We know that. And honestly, I wasn't expecting a modern whiskey here. But guys, I could have sort of sugar-coated this review because I paid a lot for it. It's part of my family vacation. I've mentioned that 17 times now, right? But guys, it is what it is. It's just not terrific. And in the back of my mind, I'm still trying to keep in mind, right? Mount Vernon, they get their money you spend on this whiskey. So, and Mount Vernon isn't, I don't think it's a government agency. I think it's a private, like, nonprofit. So these folks have jobs, right? They're telling the history of our first president there, and it gets told and remembered for all time. So it's not like your money isn't going to a good cause. It's not totally going to waste here. So if you get this rye whiskey to share with others who are brave and they want to taste his recipe, that's really cool. And it really benefits the history of our country. I mentioned the nose on this was very light. Mouthfeel, slightly below average. The finish was decently long, but it had this, what I thought initially was like a port wine note, but really I think it's more of a cranberry tart note going on, and I don't really love that finish. It's just a bit sour to me. I mean, it's whiskey for sure, but it's not good whiskey, sadly. And I'm going to be honest. I really wanted it to be, George Washington, the first president, Revolutionary War, all that good stuff. It's very cool history, but it's not so cool whiskey. Now, I'm trying real hard not to judge it as a $225 modern rye whiskey, but it's just that, guys. It's $225. Old, modern, we would call it antique, whatever. I don't know if that's part of my disappointment here because I'm not able to separate the two. I'm just saying, guys, I'm trying real hard to judge it as a more of a living snapshot of where American whiskey came from than where we are today. But try as I may here, I just can't get excited about this whiskey. And look, it's easy to drink. It's only 93 proof. So I think anybody could actually drink it. I wouldn't want to introduce anybody to whiskey with this. I think it would be fun to pass around with your buddies at a party or a get together, a bottle share. That would be kind of fun, although it wouldn't take long for this bottle to be empty. Oh, and the bottle, like I said, you can see that on my socials. It's very presidential looking. I'm glad I picked it up, but I'd never do it again. But what's done is done. It's an amazing story. They do have an amazing setup. They've got a really cool operation there. Everything's done by hand, including the milling of the grains. This is a keepsake. I'm always going to hang on to this to remember good family times. And I guess for that simple fact alone, I'm pretty happy I picked it up. Now, if you've ever tried this stuff, let me know what y'all think. Reach out on socials. Like I said, there's going to be some good stuff on socials about this episode. Email me at blindtastingpodcast@yahoo.com because I'm from the age of the dinosaurs. And guys, I don't want to leave you all on a sad note because this whiskey it didn't make my spidey senses tingle. It was more kind of a letdown. So let's all just keep in mind how blessed we are to live in this country. And let's celebrate Washington's birthday. And soon enough, we get to celebrate 250 years of our country. And honestly, I've been to Washington, D.C. enough to know it's a real wonder we've made it this far. But we have. So let's rejoice, guys. Let's celebrate. Let's be thankful we get to live here in this country and drink the finest beverage out there, bourbon whiskey. Now, I'm going to share some photos and video I took to the distillery operation on Facebook and Instagram. Take a look, all that good stuff. Share the stuff. In a previous episode, I told you Facebook is Meta is making it hard for any of us folks to get seen. It would mean a lot if you would share it, share it, share it. And if you haven't subscribed yet on the Apple, the YouTubes, the iHeart, the Amazon, we're everywhere, guys. So whatever glowing screen controls your entire freaking life, get on there like pronto and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Because lately, I've been dropping some hot whiskey news, and you're not tuned in, you're not going to hear about it right off the bat. So I don't want you to be sad, like, I thought this was Pappy, but it's actually a store pick of mellow corn, that kind of sad. Yeah, I don't want you to be sad, guys. We don't want sadness here. We want flavor. We want facts. We want whiskey freaks. So do the thing. Subscribe and be happy. Well, that's all I got for today, whiskey freaks. Thanks for listening to the Blind Tasting Podcast, Splash and Dash Extended Edition. Don't forget to like and subscribe and do all the things. Like I said, we are everywhere you can find a good podcast, and I appreciate all y'all. Cheers.